we were
and then the environment was chilled up.
first time I was hearing about this stuff. Wow. It was totally new to me.
With social impact consulting. Hello everyone, my name is Ainehi Edoro with Social Impact Consulting. I'm a development consultant with 20 years of experience working with NGOs, international NGOs, and bilateral agencies to work in project support, monitoring and evaluation, and civil society strengthening. So now, I saw that local NGOs lack the capacity to manage large-scale projects, which can in turn impact their various communities because they have the connection based on their backgrounds. So this made me create this channel so that I can add value to you for free once you subscribe to this channel and get notified of upcoming videos. I look forward to hearing from you. Hello everyone, how you all doing today? Welcome to the development sector series, which is Devsectorseries. So we were scheduled to have Dr. Ainehi Edoro on this afternoon, but you know, the time difference and everything, it looks like we will not be able to make it. Some emergencies occurred, but I still have a treat for you guys, so don't get discouraged. One of my best interviews that we conducted a couple of months ago with Olufunke Barua, who is the program officer at Ford Foundation. She talks about sustainability in nonprofit organizations. And it was an excellent interview. And I know that you all are going to have a treat. And please hang in there because after this interview, I have a few announcements and a few goodies for you guys, okay? All right. Well, stay tuned and enjoy the interview. Development Goals, now SDGs, and as technical assistance on research and policy planning in the Ministry of Communication and Digital Technology. In 2015, she was appointed as the Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian Women's Trust Fund, a technical and financial resource for women in politics and decision-making in Nigeria, where she set the strategic vision and mobilized resources. Until June 2020, she served as the Project Management Specialist, Civil Society and Media for the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID Nigeria, where she designed and pioneered multi-million-dollar civil society strengthening project with a gender-inclusive lens. Funke is currently the Program Officer for the Gender, Racial, and Ethnic Justice at the Ford Foundation's Office for West Africa in Lagos, where she leads the foundation's commitment to supporting women's rights to address violence against women and girls. Funke is named as one of the 17 women changing the world by the Institute for Inclusive Development and a member of the Women Waging Peace Network. She has been widely recognized for her work with the Nigerian Women's Trust Fund by The Guardian, She Leads Africa, and other publications, and has received several accolades for her advocacy on the inclusion of females in strategic economic, social, and political positions in Nigeria. Funke was educated at the University of Abuja with a BSc in Business Administration and the University of Nigeria Nsukka with an MBA, and completed further courses at the University of East Anglia in Public Policy and Management and the University of York. She is currently pursuing an MA in Corruption and Governance at the University of Sussex. Allow me to introduce to some and present to others, Mrs. Olufunke Barua.
Hello, Funke. How are you doing? I'm fine.
Good to
Thank you,
s-
Efwa.
good to see you. Good to see you. And
Hello, everyone. Good to see you too.
yeah, so everybody is here to see you. I mean, the comments are just streaming in. I'm just really
Thank you.
excited. On it looks like Facebook and LinkedIn are really lighting up. So
Good to hear.
so I just wanted to just kind of, you know, get a sense from you in terms of like when I first had a conversation with you, you were always emphasizing in the development sector and impact organizations on sustainability. So
Mhm.
what's really kind of led you to having that conversation in your in your extensive experience in the sector?
Thank you very much, Efwa. And this
Mm,
is good job that you're doing here. And I'm happy with the
thank
way
you.
the series has changed. I was beginning to think I was on a movie set. I didn't even know you were talking about me until I hear Funke. I was like, okay, am I in the right room? Thank you and well done. This is really great.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you to our listeners. Thanks for joining us. I know everyone is
Thank you.
busy in this unusual
Yeah,
time. So for making our time to
exactly.
come listen to me, and if I really appreciate that. So why do I harp on sustainability often? It's because
Mm,
of growth. The day we stop growing is the day we die.
mhm,
We start dying when we stop growing.
mhm,
So growth is inevitable. Change is inevitable. We must grow. It's either you're growing forward or you're growing backwards. You're losing steam or you're gaining momentum. You have a choice. And
mhm,
for organizations across West Africa and Nigeria in particular, I think we have to come to the realization and make up our mind that we must grow from handouts.
mhm,
We must
mhm,
grow to become sustainable, to be able to run
mhm,
and finance and resource our own development.
mhm,
Development without growth is not progress. You
mhm,
must be able to resource your own development. Nobody can train your children better than you can. And so we must learn to find ways beyond the aid. What are we going to do going forward? If you're an organization and you're not, or you're leading an organization and you're not thinking about that, I'm sorry. Uh, when it comes, it won't be a surprise because you just failed to plan. So I
mm,
strongly believe as money comes in, as aid comes in,
mhm,
what kind of social impact investments are we making as local
mhm,
organizations? Because
mhm,
you cannot expect that resources will continue to come to the global
mhm,
south from the global north just like
mhm,
that. We're talking about
mm,
holding our own destinies and being able to
mhm,
direct the way we want our development to go. He who pays the piper will definitely dictate the tune.
mhm,
Ford, for instance, will have a strategic framework. UNDP, the
mhm,
UN will, MacArthur will,
mhm,
Osiwa will,
mhm,
Bill and Melinda Gates Foundations. All these foundations will have things they want to achieve, but nobody
exactly.
knows best how to
Mhm,
develop Nigeria than Nigerians. I completely
mhm,
believe that. And NGOs,
mhm,
social impact investment organizations, startups, not for profits, enterprise, whatever you do in the social sector, you must find ways to move the needle slowly towards your independence in terms of your resources, your ideas, and your development. The time to start planning that was yesterday. The next best time is now. Thank you. F, why did I lose you? Or am I hanging? Hello? Hello? Hello, Efwa. Did I lose you?
Sorry about that, Funke.
Hello, I wasn't sure whether that was from me or from you. Hello, I can't hear you. Oh, so the comment says they can hear me, they can see me, but they lost you. So you were the one who went off. Efwa, we still can't hear you. I can't hear you. Did you check to see if you're on mute? But everybody else says they can see me, they can hear me. Still can't hear you. If I log out, we will lose the comments. So I didn't want to lose the comments in case there were questions. Can you ask the participants if they can see me? Can hear me, sorry. Okay. Thank you, Bridget. Bridget says she can hear me, but can't hear Efwa. Technology. Thank you, Greg. Let me try to reach Efwa.
Can you guys hear me now?
Awesome. Yes, we can hear you.
All right, great. Thank you guys for your patience. I appreciate it. You know, we live in the era of technology, so you kind of okay. So I'm not sure whether you I'm sure you were able to answer the question. So I guess I'm just going to move on to the next one.
They could hear me. Yes.
Yeah, so let me just move on to the next one then. Okay. So in your current role, I know you covered this a bit. How has sustainability impacted your relationships with grantees? So how are you, because this is something you're passionate about from the onset. So how have you been able to encourage your grantees to really look into sustainability?
So one of the things we do is Ford is an organization that invests in social justice and equity, and we always say that we're not prescriptive, that we try to give our partners room to improve themselves and to tell us the ideas, because without the ideas, I actually don't have a job. That's the secret. Most people think the power rests with the people working with international foundations. But if you don't come to us with your ideas and ask for funding, we are out of a job. So really, one of the things we stress is to say, when you come with your plans and your proposals, what next? I always ask, what next happens? How do you hope if you ask me for a 2-year support, a 3-year support, after those number of years, what are your plans to sustain this initiative in the event that we can no longer support it? So I always also advise for organizations to have programs and then have projects as subsets of those programs.
I see.
Many organizations have projects, and projects are time-bound. They are short-term, at best medium-term, but programs are long-term. For instance, if you have an organization that say our thematic focus is GBV, is women's economic empowerment, what you need to be designing under those two subheads is to have programs that help you address those thematic areas, not isolated projects. When you have isolated projects, you cannot plan sustainably. You cannot plan for the future because once the project is over, it's over. You would not know
That's
what to do
true.
next. But if you have programs and you say, this is how I get to from point A to B, and you have projects inside those programs that help you achieve that. When you take up one project and you finish that part of the project, it needs to feed into another bigger picture of your program. That way it's easy to sustain. So you can give portions of that program to development partners or to funders to support different for. So at every point in time, that project is alive. That program is alive.
The program,
Even if you end the project. For example, let's use the DevTech series. The DevTech series is a program. Funke session is a project. My session will not continue forever, but you have other speakers lined up to speak, to talk about DevTech sector series. Your sustainability impact, your sustainability conversation. The topic you gave me was on, if I recall correctly, let me look at that again.
On
how you said I should be speaking on, yes, building sustainable impact organizations in Africa. Now that can be a program. Yeah. How do you build sustainable impact organizations? You are going to be looking at staffing, human resource, capacity of staff to write fantastic concept notes, to design innovative strategies, technology, social impact investing, making these organizations into not just not-for-profits, but maybe like a limited guarantee that can also raise resources externally to support what are the kind of investments you need to. So these different components, you can flesh them out as projects. So the simple one is Devsector series and is a project, is a program. The sustainability conversation is a project under Devtech series. In fact, Funke session is just an activity.
I see.
So that's as deep as
amazing. Amazing.
So when you can link those things together, they're not that, it's not rocket science. It's just that we interchange so many of these things. People interchange program with project, an activity. When I ask people, is this activity? People list programs as activity. I'm like, this is too big for an activity. This should be a program with subsets of units that can then flesh it out into, different projects and all. So if we break it down into such small details and not use too much grammar, just use everyday examples, people will get it.
Amazing. You just, and I keep telling people that how you know when somebody knows what you're talking about is when you can explain it to a layman and break it down in layman's terms for people to understand, because that just settles it. You get what I'm saying? Yes, so with sustainability now, what do you think the current state is in Africa with regards to sustainability? Do you feel like organizations are aware? Have they been able to impact the continent through sustainability? And how would that work? Because you are now your role now is no longer national, is regional. So what are your observations?
So across the West Africa region, I think we're doing good. I think there are fantastic organizations from Dakar to Accra to Lagos to Abuja. There are organizations doing. You can see the youth movement, and if there's any group or subset that takes the top for me, is young people. Young people organizing, young feminist organizing, doing wonderful things with limited resources from the abroad, like I like to say.
From the abroad.
You find, look at the NSAS movement. This was resourced by young people, which do not give them any money. Look at what's happening in Dakar with the uprising and the protest, and young rappers in the music industry, using their voice, and there's no money coming from anywhere. I think we're getting we're waking up and we're smelling the coffee. We can smell the roses. We know that, yes, we need to do this on our own. Go check movements and ideologies that haven't been resourced from the West. They last longer. Look at how during the military era, all the groups, the CLOs, the Nadecos and all these people had resources that they pulled together from within. There's a lot of money here. We haven't just found a way to appeal to Nigerians that investing in the social sector is good business. We need to find a way to say, if the people are not healthy, if you work in health, for instance, you need to go to organizations in the pharmaceutical industry or in the healthcare industry and say, if the country is not healthy, people will just be buying drugs to stay alive. Why don't you pursue people buying drugs to stay healthy? Just to even eat better and all that. That doesn't mean your business will collapse. If in the education sector you are and private sector people who produce textbooks and they don't care, or other private sector organizations, they don't want to invest in the education sector, you tell them, what about your human resource? If you don't invest in the education, how do you get your next crop of staff, the takeover generation of your current staff? How do you resource human resources? Provide resources for us to continue to push the needle and to continue to work with government to ensure there are resources and policies and frameworks to improve education in Nigeria. It will have a ripple effect on your organization's human resource capital in the future. Being able to tie small bits and pieces of information, no big grammar here. They need to know. Dangote needs to be able to invest in education in Nigeria, because if he needs to have be the number one billionaire in Africa, he needs human resources to do that.
He does,
So the Elunelu Foundation has identified what they need, and they need to continue to invest in entrepreneurs. He's a smart man. More entrepreneurs means more profit for the banking industry.
Exactly.
You know, so people need to be able to tie these things to everyday issues. And for me, some are doing very well. The old guys maybe need to get with the program and find better and innovative ways to then do this. But yes, I think across the region, I'm happy with the level of organizing and across the social sector, and how young people are breaking barriers, especially young feminists, how they're breaking barriers. Look at the teamwork with the NSAS. Who would have thought that the very same name that people called young feminists, because they're single, because they're not married, they hate men, they're bitter. They were the same people who provided the resources that helped the NSAS movement do what it did to date.
Exactly. So I think really making that connection with sustainability and letting really selling social sector. And there was something that I listened to, was it Osai Alile from the Aspire Coronation Trust Foundation. One thing she said is non-profits and social enterprise, they need to really treat their organizations like a business. So you are saying, this is my value proposition.
The business of social.
Exactly.
The social sector.
Exactly. The business of
we're
social
treating
sector.
It's a charity, yes. But every organization needs a business model. A lot of our organizations don't have a business, not just a strategy. Have a business model. How do you want to sustain your organization? People need to have those deep thinking. And this proliferation of NGOs, everybody saturating the space, there is not enough money to go around. So you must find something unique about you and about your organization that sells you differently. You need to sell yourself. What's your universal selling point? I did a course in marketing, and I think it has helped me more in my development journey than my policy, my planning, and Zelda. It's about selling yourself. You need to be able to sell yourself. A lot of people can't sell. They can't even sell a finger. So you need those elevator speeches, 1 minute, 3 minutes, you are in tune, you are in touch with people who can provide the kind of resources or networks that you need to move to the next level. How do you sell your pitch to those people? You need to practice and practice and practice and practice.
Interesting. Really, really, really something. And I think you've already alluded to the answer to the question. I was going to put how can it be replicated, but you've already talked about that. So I want to talk to you about the stakeholders involved in building an impact-driven organization. You touched on it a bit, but just to be more specific so that folks can know the way forward from this conversation.
The stakeholders involved in?
in
what?
in building an impact-driven organization? Because in order for you to be impact-driven, obviously, like you said earlier, you have to be sustainable. So
Yeah.
who are the stakeholders that need to be involved in building an impact-driven
I
organization?
think your number one fans in an
Mm-hmm,
organization is that
mm-hmm,
is the members of those organizations, the team,
mm-hmm,
the staff.
mm-hmm,
You need to be intentional about
mm-hmm,
employing people who have a passion. I know there is no job. There are no
mm-hmm,
jobs right now. The job market
mm-hmm,
is saturated with so many
mm-hmm,
applicants, people looking for work. So the
mm-hmm,
tendency is you find that a lot of people come into employment not because they really want to do that work or because they have a passion for that work, but mostly,
mm-hmm,
because that's what is immediately available.
mm-hmm,
There are two people that come into organizations. One are those who are the first set are those who really have the vision, the passion, and that's really what they love doing. And they were looking for
mm-hmm.
an opportunity to be able to express themselves. The others are
Mm-hmm.
those who are just looking for a means of livelihood.
Exactly.
So the first ones are easy to manage. You don't have to do
Mm-hmm,
any struggle to keep them. You have to actually make them stay because once you don't fulfill that desire, they may leave. The
mm-hmm,
second one are the toughest. Half of them would eventually fall in love with that work, develop their
mm-hmm,
passion. I used to call
mm-hmm,
myself an accidental feminist, for instance. Develop their
mm-hmm,
passion in that work, and then
mm-hmm,
they will, stay. The
mm-hmm,
others just want to feed their
mm-hmm,
families, meet their needs. Those are the dangerous ones because if they don't share that passion with you and it's just a job to them. So there's a
mm-hmm.
place for passion, and of course, there's a place for interest uh, because passion alone doesn't pay bills. But also, you
Exactly.
want to make sure you are working with people of like minds.
Mm-hmm,
So your first set of people, stakeholders, are the people in that organization. How do they sell
mm-hmm,
your organization? What's the passion they bring
mm-hmm,
to the table? They will go to meetings for
mm-hmm,
you. They will write proposals for you. They will write concept
mm-hmm,
notes for you. They will work as
mm-hmm,
admin, finance, or
mm-hmm,
whatever you have,
mm-hmm.
depending on the size of your organization. The
Yeah.
second group are the ecosystem in which you work in. You need to be able to build alliances with that ecosystem. When you work on health, look for networks that work on health and not just health broadly. What part of health? Is it
Mm-hmm,
sexual and reproductive health? Is it infectious diseases? Is it HIV/AIDS and what have you? Is it nutrition? Look for organizations within that ecosystem that you can work with that can
mm-hmm,
help you build that together with them you can sort of build a community of practice where you can share resources and
mm-hmm,
ideas and do peer review and work together and maybe even bid for bigger grants or
mm-hmm,
sustainability frameworks in the future. So
mm-hmm,
that's two. The third, of course, will be your partners. I don't want to call them
mm-hmm,
beneficiaries.
mm-hmm,
Your partners, the people who
mm-hmm,
you work with, who your
mm-hmm,
services are meant for, or who are beneficiaries of what you do. They are also very important. In no particular order, I'm just listing
mm-hmm.
these out as,
Of
as, as
course.
they appeal to me.
Mm-hmm,
But they are the third because they matter. They're the
mm-hmm,
reason why you do the work you do. And for you to be sustainable, you need to be able to fill that vacuum that you found that gap that you noticed in the first place that drove your passion to work in this area. So
mm-hmm,
you would notice that I didn't even list international development partners. I
mm-hmm,
didn't even list the private sector. Once those three people are on board, it's just a matter of time, before you can really connect the dots in terms of what you want to do and where you want to be in the future. By the time you come up with your strategy on sustainability or on taking this
mm-hmm,
forward, and the demand and hunger for your work, for your side. Look at
mm-hmm,
organizations, for instance, and forgive me, I don't really want to mention names. Look at EIE has
mm-hmm,
stayed, enough is enough has stayed on and relevant for almost a decade right now or more, since the Occupy Nigeria period in 2011,
mm-hmm,
because they keep churning out materials,
mm-hmm,
information, resources that the
mm-hmm,
people want. Same thing
mm-hmm,
with an organization like Yaga, same,
mm-hmm,
youth movement, same thing with an
mm-hmm,
organization like Code, Budget.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
If people don't like the kind of outputs that come out from your organization, even if you are getting all the grants in the world, you will remain in obscurity. And
Exactly.
social impact work is not a popularity contest. But let's be
At
frank with
all.
ourselves. You
Mm-hmm.
also need people to know what you offer and what you're doing.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. People need to know you. So you need to just try to get out of obscurity, and while you're doing all that, really building the stakeholder network. So I'm going to, and okay, before I go to my next question, if you guys have any questions for Funke, please put it in the comment section, because she's talked about a lot of rich information. And if you guys have any questions for her, please make sure you put it in the comment section, so that when it gets to that part of the conversation, we will then post your questions up on the screen, and then Funke will just be able to answer those questions for you. Okay, so my next question is, now you talked about being an accidental feminist. Now, uh, I feel like I'm an accidental development enthusiast as well. That story is for another day. But so as a feminist, you've worked with multiple organizations that have worked on gender issues. So how important is it for them to be sustainable, and how can they make that happen? Because with what I've noticed, there are a lot of, I mean, as you know, one of the marginalized groups is women. So the need is vast. So how can we have more sustainable gender-based organizations working on gender-based issues, and how can they make that happen?
So the model is not entirely different, but because we work in an area that, is at both sides of the extreme, either very well loved or well hated in gender work. And many organizations put more money in other issues like anti-corruption, like healthcare, like natural resource and climate change, technology. Those are the big areas. But one of the ways to help gender-focused organizations is to not narrow your vision. Yes, I am one of those who preach have thematic areas, don't fly everywhere. I see a lot of NGOs who have and I've talked about it many times. They do health, they do education, they do women empowerment and skills acquisition, they do violence against women and girls, they do women's political participation, they do women in technology, women in agri, everything. Once women are part of it, they are there. I see disability-led organizations too by women. They are doing women disability education. They are doing women in disability in politics. They are doing women you cannot do that. You will not survive. You'll be a jack of all trade and a master of none. The key is to have a niche. Where do you want to focus on? Have that niche. Find people who work in that area. Build that ecosystem. I keep talking about ecosystem because we can't work in isolation. You can't be an island. Yes, you must be a master in one particular area, but you need other rulers. A king is not a powerful king if he's the only king in the whole wide world. You're not a deity or God. What's the use of a one president of the whole world when he doesn't have other presidents to work with? So, but you also need to then build yourself in that area that you work in. Build your capacity and your strengths in that area that you work in, and then find the kind of organizations that resource that area and push your luck far. Don't be limited to when it is women in politics. Your own is all about we want women in parliament. We want women representatives. We want parties to put women. We've been there, done that. It's still news. What else can you bring to the table? Find other ideas. Are you even looking at doing research? What's happening with all the female legislators or the women in politics, for instance? How have they fared over the years? A comparative analysis. Attack people in the political elites with these figures to say, see all the women that have been in politics. Look at the astounding work that they're doing. Don't you think we should have more women? What kind of strategies? I would love to fund that kind of strategy. Look at all other things, how women are able to balance their humanity, and ethics and work, and how it's impacting the GDP of our country. I've mentioned this so many times. I know there are studies on how women in more women in decision making positions, or in economic, like, affects our GDP, things like that. Something different, not just shouting, we're going on the street, hey, we want more women, hey, 35%. Oh, if it's policy you want to focus on, and all your work is going to be on policy and how to ensure that those, laws and policies and procedural frameworks are in place, focus on that. Let those who are good with the protests go on. If yours is the activism and the demand for inclusion, focus on that. Add one or two more things, but don't spread too thin. Are you looking? I've not seen NGOs saying, I'm doing women in politics, but I'm focusing on women in politics at councillor level, at ward level. Women are cheated in those areas. I'll give you the example of India. When women wanted to enter, break through the political sphere in India, they left all the men at the parliament and all. They went to the wards and the councils area and infiltrated that space. What strategies are you using? Why is everybody focusing on National Assembly, on State House of Assembly? What's happening at the council level, at the ward level? Is it you even want to look at boards? There are thousands of agencies in Nigeria. What's the distribution of women on these boards? Are you working on sexual harassment? Focus. If you're working on sexual harassment, is it in institutions? Is it informal? Is it in the informal sector? Is it in the formal sector? Is it in private establishments or public establishments? Is it in institutions of higher learning? Is it among young people? I haven't seen anybody looking at sexual harassment in the marketplace. That happens a lot. Apart from a few young feminists who did the market match once to say, stop touching us when we come to the market. Look at the impact of that work. I've been looking for those young women. I don't know whether you know about the market match. I think it was in 2018 or 2019.
I heard about it.
Yes. And they had these things spread across. Stop touching women and girls when we come to the markets. Leave our bodies are our own. Targeted, strategic, intentional, innovative work will be sustainable. I am sure I've derailed a little from your question.
You really talked about staying focused. You really talked about making sure that you stay focused and you're known for something, because that's what I teach in my seminars, that you need to be known for something. You get what I'm saying? Like, even, yes, you're with Ford Foundation, but your brand is known for being a gender advocate. You are not everywhere. You're like, this is where I'm at. And I feel like that is what organizations
and I
need
even
to
also
do.
have a niche. Gender is also wide. My work has revolved around women's political participation or gender-based violence. I haven't gone into women health or education. It doesn't mean that that's not important to me, but I can't do all. I can't do women in
everything.
I can't do education, child marriage, female gender. Those parts and components can come under my work on GBV. But my expertise has revolved around women in decision making and GBV.
There's one question I want to ask before I transition into I'm transition to the audience. Like I said, guys, if you have any questions, start spilling them over right now. So, like, what do you feel like an impact organization can do? I know we talked about that. Organizations need to learn how to be sustainable within. What can they do to attract the attention of organizations like the Ford Foundation for partnership, while still working to make sure that they are self-sustaining? So can they work? So organizations are saying, yes, I have donor funding. I have donor funding, but I really need to backpedal into sustainability. How can I do that and still maintain partnerships for my smaller projects within my program?
You need to have a strategic plan. And I always tell organizations, it doesn't have to be to a 200-page document. I have seen 5-page, I have made 5-6-page strategic documents. This is how we want to get to. This is what I need to do. For the next 5 years, this is what I want to focus on. Organizations want to work with, development partners want to work with organizations that have a plan. You can't work with people that don't have a plan or follow the money. It's just when there is, when HIV is the in thing, we move. When GBV is the in thing, we move. When women disability rights is the issue, we move. And you are caught everywhere. So you need to have that strategic focus and plan. What's your plan? Is it written down? Have stakeholders look at your plan for you. Is this thing even doable for me? And truly, if you really know what you're doing and you're doing the little things and you put yourself out there, simple things like, do you even have a page? You don't need to have a website. Do you even have a LinkedIn profile for your organization, an Instagram or a Twitter page for your organization? And thank God for what's the name of this website interface you can actually get on your own now? WordPress. You can design your own and talk about you and churn out information, feel a need, feel a niche and a gap. Every organization that can solve a problem will be looked at. I have told you about organizations that I'm looking for. They're not even looking for me, but I've seen something that I like in what they do, and I need them. And innovation, have innovation. When I was CEO of Women Fund, we had a project called Ideathon. And it was calling out to young people to say, sending ideas. We have over 5,000 NYSC from different batches sending in ideas about how we can change the status quo on women in politics and in decision making in Nigeria. So there are so many things. If you do some of these things, you would find that you yourself, you would attract donor funding. That doesn't stop you. In fact, donors will be happy to hear that you're doing something else to resource what you're doing. And one key thing, I have seen organizations sending proposals and all they write, if they need 200,000 to do that work, they want 4 to do all the 200,000. What are you bringing to the table? That tells me that as soon as this project is done, it is finished.
It is finished.
Even if you don't have any money elsewhere that you are putting in the project, can you just say that our in-kind contribution to this is staff time? Maybe rather than charge 20% or 50% of start time, 10% of start time is contribution to the project. We will remove this from the cost and use it as contribution to the project. And if you've been able to raise resources, which I was doing in my other life, from other sources, you can plow back and say, we are putting in 10,000 into this project. You don't need to pay for this. We would give this back. That's how you're building a sustainable structure for yourself. You get used to it. I recently received a proposal from an international organization who are funding, whose budget was about 800,000, and they just asked us to bring 200,000, and they had 600,000. I didn't even argue with them. That was fantastic.
Wow.
That was like a quarter. Yes.
Wow.
I am yet to see any local organization do that. That was like a quarter of the resources. Imagine asking, oh, this is going to cost 800, but we just need 200 from you. We will plow in 600. But you find organizations charge you staff time. They charge you for project manager, finance manager. Then they come down and charge you for development of reports. And I'm wondering, what are your staff doing if you're going to be asking the donor to pay for report writing?
Yes, exactly.
Printing is another thing. But don't charge me, a donor, for report writing and development.
But if you're charging for staff time, why are you charging for development of reports? Or you have an M&E
officer. I have even seen some weird ones. You have an M&E officer whom you're charging 25 to 30% of time to do the project. And you are still asking for monitoring and evaluation costs.
Okay.
You know.
That's a little bit of double dipping right there. So
sometimes they don't even know, because that evaluation person in the office, you are not tasking that person to work. You're just giving that person just a free rider. So they probably are going to get an external consultant to still do M&E when there's a staff who is pulling salary, you know. So these are the ways we also waste money. I'm not even looking at it as double dipping. I'm looking at it as maybe they don't even know. Because even when you want to double dip, you cover yourself, right? But they may not even know. Because some people will put an M&E consultant and there's an M&E officer. If that M&E officer you have cannot do the work of the M&E consultant, sack that person. Have a
And get somebody
consultant
else.
who does the work per project, and he's paid, and he's not on full time on your payroll. That's the way to save money.
Wow. So what you're even talking about now, because you, from the first third of this conversation, you were talking about sustainability and even revenue generation through relationships with stakeholders. Now, this time you're even talking about cost control, like, because there are a lot of wastages. So if you're talking about cost control now, the money that you're saving, you can use that as sustainability, which is really something. But that is
so you can charge them and eat to the project, but your staff should be able to do it, or you remove that staff who is going to just be there, and he's the one that will be asking the M&E consultant, "Are you done? When are you submitting the report?" Come on, what's that person doing? The project officer should be able to write a report. You shouldn't be asking. The number of consultants we see on projects scare me, because I'm like, if this office is just a conduit pipe, consultants are the ones doing the work, and your staff don't have the skills to do that work, there is a problem.
There's a problem.
There is a problem. That's where all the money from your grant is going to external people.
That's really something that you're saying this, because you're talking about a lot of cost control mechanisms in terms of internally your human resources, and even having resources, even the cost savings you're having, you can even use it to build the capacity of your current staff so that they can actually build on projects. And sometimes you can even save more money by hiring experienced hires. You say you have to have so years of experience, because you're
and
going to
even
come
investments,
and
people don't think about investments. You may not be, of course you can't invest, do not got money, but there are some resources, unrestricted funding in your, that just sits in your account. What are they doing when you're done with the project? Maybe monies you've been paid, because some organizations let you charge in direct.
Hello, everyone. I'm sure you guys enjoyed that streaming. If you want to finish it, it's on my streaming. We have our special guest here. I am so excited to have her. That is Dr. Ainehi Edoro Glines. She's here. So I'm very excited about it. So guys, just hang tight. I know you just watched Funke Barwa. That's a phenomenal video. You can watch it on all on this stream. Actually, if you're on YouTube, it's on the videos. If it's on Facebook, you can go on Social Impact Consulting, and it's right there for you to take a look at. Just look at the thumbnail, you'll see it, and you can finish it up there. And LinkedIn Live as well on #Devsectorseries. Again, thank you for hanging with us. I'm going to play Dr. Ainehi Edoro Glines video bio, and we're gonna get started. All right, see you guys shortly. Dr. Ainehi Edoro Glines is a Nigerian academic. She is the Assistant Professor of Global Black Literatures at the University of Wisconsin Madison, with a joint appointment in the African Cultural Studies Department. She was formerly Assistant Professor of Global Anglophone Literatures at Marquette University. She teaches and does research on African literature and digital culture. She has a BA from Morgan State University, an MA from Kansas University, and a PhD from Duke University. Her research interests include 21st century fiction, literature in digital social media, the global Anglophone novel, African literature, contemporary British fiction, novel theory, political philosophy, and digital humanities. Dr. Ainehi has contributed significantly to the African literary space. She has delivered lectures in conferences, symposiums, and book festivals internationally on the African literature and storytelling scene, utilizing social media platforms to promote African literary arts and various other related topics while encouraging young artists to bloom. She is the founder and editor-in-chief of Brittle Paper, a leading online platform dedicated to African writing and literary culture. She is working on her book titled
Forest Imaginaries: How African Novels Think. In 2016, Dr. Ainehi was included in the New African Magazine's list of the 100 most influential Africans, with Nigeria's The Guardian reporting her to be among the 5 most influential Nigerian women of 2016. In 2018, she made OkayAfrica's Top 100 Women list in honor of her work in media and publishing. Her writing commentaries have been featured on The Guardian, BBC World News, and Africa is a Country. Allow me to introduce to some and present to others Dr. Ainehi Edoro Glines.
Hello, Doc. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Oh, that's such a sweet video. Oh my
goodness. Yeah. And you know what? Anytime I do that for my guests are like, "That's me. I did all that."
It's like a mini documentary, you know? It's like, wow, I feel special.
Yeah, I love it. I like to make my guests feel special because a lot of times, folks just kind of just put their head to the ground and just work. So they don't really understand that they've done so much. They're just working. Okay, the next thing.
Yeah.
So sometimes, I just want to be that platform that reminds them that, you've done a lot and kudos and well done.
That's great. Thank you for having me on.
No worries. Thank you so much for coming, because I know the time difference is crazy and so many other logistical issues, but thank you so much for taking your time to be with us. So I've been wanting to have this interview with you for a while. We've discussed this for a while now in terms of featuring you here on Devsectorseries, because a lot of writers, African literature, literary giants have been voices for change, for social change, social justice. And and as an expert, I'm like, you would know a whole lot about what's behind the scenes, how they even get to that point where they are Chinua Achebe wrote I don't know what happened. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened just now.
But we're talking about Chinua Achebe.
Yes. So he just, he wrote his final book before he passed away. There Was a Country, and it really made a big statement, to the world. So can you just give us a sense, right, of how significant of the significance of African literature in societal change?
Thank you for that question. And I appreciate your wanting to see the impact of African literature in that way, right? Because many times we don't think of cultural movements as part of the broader movement to create real change in the world, right? That literary people are just trying to, entertain people with books. Or musicians are just trying to entertain people with music. But, the kind of connection that you're drawing here, I think, is a very important one. And is one that is relevant to African literature specifically, because at the very inception of modern African literature, right, which many people will place in the 20th century, the late 19th century, African literature actually came into being as part of a larger social change movement. So if you think about the fact that there was colonialism, right? So when people like Thomas Mofolo were writing in South Africa, Achebe started writing in the mid 20th century, right? They were facing a world in which European colonialism still held Africa, right, in thrall. So part of the decolonization movement part of the attempt to change that, to find for Africans political autonomy, but also cultural freedom, came from the efforts of African writers who were trying to help people imagine a world that was better than what they already had. And that so many of the African writers, Achebe, Wole Soyinka, they were all part of this very, very clear, self-aware project to change their world. They didn't like it the way it was, politically, culturally, and in all kinds of form. They felt it just wasn't right to be part of a universe where your sovereignty, yourself as a human being was being called into question by exploitative power. And they clearly saw that there was a direct connection between the work that they were doing as storytellers and the possibility of change. And that's so, yeah, it's very much in the DNA of African literature to imagine itself like that. And it hasn't changed, right? Because today, as we see new social problems come up, like the discrimination of LGBT communities, we are still seeing African literature at the forefront of trying to kind of, change that.
That's really something, because even our founding fathers, Nnamdi Azikiwe, he was also a writer,
Right.
before he now went into politics. So, and a lot of times even when there are issues that abound in the country, if we don't hear from Wole Soyinka or somebody, we're like, okay, what's happening? We would hear from him. And
Because you're really thinking, what does Soyinka think? What's he going to say? What's, his input on the situation? And I mean, literature generally itself, it's a powerful cultural tool for social change. And I would say it does this in very real ways. For example, literature helps people to develop empathy for another person's experience, right? So you don't know about someone, their world, their plight, their predicament, and then you read a story about them, and all of a sudden you are taken into their world. You can vicariously feel their pain, see their worries. That's one powerful way in which literature helps us to actually change our mindset and champion other people's cause. For someone who is very interested in something like this, I would say a novel like Buki Papillon's An Ordinary Wonder is about an intersex Nigerian girl. She was born intersex, but her family just completely made her life miserable by not being open to what it meant to be who she was. After I read that novel, it shook me to the core. For the first time, I could see what it was like to be such a person. And that power of literature to essentially magically transform us into inhabiting somebody else's world is a powerful tool for social change. And literature also serves as a mirror for us and society, so that we can look at literature, at story, poetry, and say, okay, this is why my world is messed up. I don't want to be a part of it. Or this is the kind of world I should aspire to. This is what a better world looks like, right? That's so, I mean, in many ways, the stories, the poetry, the ways that literature forces us to think, ignite conversation, it is a necessary part of social change. And Achebe believed that, literally, that the novels he was writing was shaping minds and changing the world.
Well, it definitely was. And this even transitions us right to our next question about the various literary icons that we have, such as Soyinka, Chinua Achebe, Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, who is like a super feminist. I mean, she's like my idol. To take, honestly, I love her books. I'm segueing her book Americana. I just went into a journey of my days in Chicago when she talked about when the character went into a hair shop. I was just like, oh my God.
That's me. Like that's
So I was just so I feel like she put so many identities in that book. So she's another one that is awesome. So what kind of path do they take? Did you like, because you're such an expert and you studied a lot of these authors, do they take a similar path, or is it different? Is it an inborn gift, or is it something that's developed? Like, what path do they take before they now become that respected voice of social change?
You're very right in your suspicion that everybody's path is different. And I think it's important to realize that, so that we don't reduce everybody's story into some kind of idea of what it should mean to be a writer. Wole Soyinka was a fighter, So this is like 1965. So he's published his first novel in 1966, and he's received training in England in all kinds of theater performances. He's back home now. In 1965, he held a radio station at gunpoint. Okay. Forcing them to broadcast an anti-corruption message.
I see.
Okay. And then this is public information. If you go to pen.org, it's on there. It's kind of part of Soyinka's story as what today we will call a social justice warrior.
Mm-hmm. And
it's very much part of his personality because, if you know Soyinka, you know that his Orisha is Ogun.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and sorry, I'm pronouncing it the Edo way because, when I say Ogun, my Yoruba listeners are always like, no, that's not how to pronounce it. But in Edo, we have Ogun too.
Yeah.
That's how we say it. So anyway, that's his Orisha. And Ogun is the god of war. Ogun is a revolutionary figure who doesn't like the status quo. He's this principle in any system that messes up with the system to create the possibility for change. That's how Soyinka sees himself. And all through his life, he's had zero tolerance for any kind of reactionary, repressive system. In 1960, towards the end of the 60s, in the Biafran War, he ended up in jail because, again, he wanted to, intervene in the war. And so his celebrated memoir, The Man Died, is about his experience in jail as a political prisoner. So he is like, calm down, let's fight. That is Soyinka's approach to activism. He's a militant, unapologetically, and he takes on systems of power. He doesn't care how grand or how lethal they are. And many times he's had to pay for it, in very personal ways. In 1994, he had to exile Nigeria because of the then Abacha regime, right? And then he's used his plays a lot to stage protests. That's the kind of activist that he is, the kind of all-out social justice warrior. Achebe is different, right? Achebe, you might not know, he was one of the people who drafted the Ahira Declaration, which is sort of the Bible for Biafra.
I see.
Yeah, so this is a guy who was very passionate about his own idea for political change. And beside that, his novel, Things Fall Apart, is believed to have revolutionized the way Africans imagined colonialism, right? And positioned themselves against it. I'm talking earlier that literature sometimes shapes our minds by showing us what the world should be. For so long, Europeans had told us that our history is crappy, our past is horrible, all Africans did was wake up in the morning and kill themselves. And, it was just a completely disorderly society until we came in as the saviors.
Yeah, that's the narrative.
That's the narrative. Achebe said that's BS. And writes this beautiful novel in which he represents a complex society. It's not perfect. And Achebe will tell you that. I don't romanticize the past. No society is perfect. but every society is human, and you have to give that to people. So I see him as kind of contributing to social change in the way he gave Africans all over the continent a language to think about their world, to think about their lives in ways that were meaningful. Adichie is of course her path to influencing social change is more familiar to us today, right? Mm-hmm. We live in the world of social media where if you have any kind of influence, which means having a platform, you are sort of expected to also be actively involved in making social change. This is gone at the days when you can say, I'm an artist, I don't do political stuff. Today you have to, right? So she sort of came of age in this new reality, and she's used her work, her thinking, to essentially revolutionize the way we think about feminism, right? She's made it something that lots of people can relate to, that even men can relate to. And many people don't know this about her, but at the thick of Nigeria's banning of gay marriage and all the stuff happening in Uganda, Adichie was one of the people who voiced openly and powerfully in support of LGBT communities on the continent. So yeah, these are writers who, in their own different ways, they've leveraged either their work, their personal lives, or their writing in support of social change.
And they've really used their art to influence the world, because individually they would just have their individual ideals, but through their art, and they're then able to share it with us, then we're able to even share in their lived experience. And those of us that agree with their ideals, with their ideologies, can now align with them, and then our voices may be amplified.
Right.
It's really something that, you know, they have been able to do this with their gift. So now you talked about some obstacles, especially you spoke about Soyinka, that he was actually in prison during the Civil War. I know that I mean, I read there was a country, so I have an idea of some of the challenges that Achebe faced during the Biafran War, because he was actually, you know, pretty much in the inner caucus in terms of trying to even come up with the government of Biafra.
Right.
So some of those challenges, but do you have anything else to kind of highlight in terms of some of the challenges that they faced and how they were able to overcome them?
Soyinka, I would say, is an example of the personal costs that come from a life of activism, right? In the sense that he was imprisoned, he had to run for his life, he was exiled, and stuff like that. But you know this writer Ken Saro-Wiwa, who was killed, right, for his advocacy for the Ogoni people against exploitative oil multinationals, right? So like, your life is on the line, and some people get hurt in the process. So to me, that's sort of the big challenge. You know, how can you, as an artist, as a writer, find safety in the midst of advocating for social change, especially when you are in a space that makes you vulnerable. The second thing is something that I think applies to every artist that is in the activist space, and that's something I would say applies also to Adichie's generation, right? Whether you are a movie star, a singer, a novelist, you have to use your platform to support something, right? It's expected. If you don't, then you're criticized for it. So today, it feels like it's no longer a matter of choice, right? And you know, I don't know if that's bad or good, right? There's a part of me that wants to respect somebody saying, I don't want to be involved in politics. What I do is art. But then there's also a part of me that says, I mean, darling, you have a platform, you know? There are people suffering. There are people dying. There are people whose freedoms are being taken away. It won't kill you, you know, to use your power, your social influence, which was partly given to you by people themselves, towards that. So I think it's one of those conversations that I think is worth having about what are the limits to a writer's involvement in activism, you know, because you get a situation where it's very possible that your art could then become indistinguishable from your activism, so that people know you less and less as a novelist and more as, you know, that person who champions feminism or who champions X or who champions X, right? And that, so as an artist, how is it possible for you to still in some way maintain something of your art while, you know, actively and publicly being involved in changing things? Or is it possible to find ways that both things are sort of in relation, in conversation, and leverage that, right? But the incontrovertible fact is that today, right, as an artist, you know, one has to think about what it means to work and create within the space of advocating for social change.
That is it. It is a very is an interesting balance. So, are you an artist? Are you an activist? Are you both? How does that? So it's an interesting balance too. So I feel like it's something that has to be up for conversation in terms of how does that work?
How you navigate that that conflict.
Exactly, because I'm sure there are some artists that have this inner conflict, like, I don't want any problem, but you know, there's injustice, but I really don't want it, because there are lots of things to even consider. I think I was talking to I think was it the one of the executives of a newspaper company, and he said, you know, when you are married, things are a bit different, because he was an activist. And then now he's married. So he's like, there are lots of other things I need to consider before as I write, but I still want to be that respected writer. So it's like you said, it's a very interesting balance to look at. So we're going to transition now to the youth. I mean, you know, like I do, that the largest youth population is here in Africa. And so how has the younger generation been embracing African literature?
I mean, very well. You know, in fact, they are African literature at this point. You know,
really,
if you exist within African literary discourse and community long enough, you can sense that something is shifting. You know, and for me, I date it at, I would say, the turn of the 21st century and the advent of digital culture, right? That there's literally a break. You can tell that African literature from before then just feels differently from what it is now. And that's partly because the audiences are different now, you know? Before we were writing for a global readership who had certain ideas about decolonization, for instance, as being the driving conversation, you know, of African literature. But today, you know, I don't know that millennials, you know, are really centered on colonialism as a way of framing the world. You know, they aren't. I mean, there are other problems. Trust me, the world is never problem free.
I'm telling you.
But I don't think that it's that one specifically, right? And for a long time, African literature was driven, inspired, galvanized by this intention of responding to colonialism as a framework of organizing the world and organizing life, right? But today that has changed. People have different problems, different ideological issues that they want to explore, right? And that's so you can feel, you can sense that writers are writing to this new kind of audience. And because they are doing that, yes, young African readers are very much embracing African literature. And then also, if maybe we go back to Achebe's time, right, we can talk about an African literature that was just defined by what many people would think of as realism, stories that represented life the way they are, that try to be close to representing to representing life as closely as they are to reality, right? So think of a book like Things Fall Apart Again. It's very much easy to read. It's just kind of presenting the world as it is. But then today we're seeing a turn towards speculative fiction.
I see.
African readers of African literature on the continent, outside of it, are very much gravitating towards African science fiction, fantasy, just stories that imagine the future. You sense that is a way that readers and writers are more wrapped up in questions about the future than Achebe's generation was. They want to say, look, can I imagine what the future could be like? Or can I imagine a future that is centered on Africa? Not every time aliens have to go to Tokyo or go to New York City. They can come to Lagos too. And they can come to Johannesburg too. That's so just these ways that they are reimagining African worlds in relation to questions of the future is a new thing, and is one that many young readers are gravitating towards. And then also, there are just way more young people writing today than ever before. And there are all kinds of social economic reasons to account for this. At Brittle Paper, we receive submissions. Our submissions come from the continent. 99% of submissions we receive are from young writers, 19 years old, 20 years old. And we get like 300 submissions in the list every month.
Wow.
Right? Yes. And that, that's so there's lots, there's a lot of writing happening among young people. And they also, just young people doing big and successful things. I don't know if you know the writer Achebe Emezi. Their work has such global resonances, and publishers are willing to pay top dollar, for the works of African writers, many of them very young. So it tells us that the kids are all right. They are taking up the space that was beautifully built up by the previous generation.
That is very good to hear, that they are embracing that we've been able to preserve African literature, no matter how it comes out, because I'm thinking about it as in a full circle theory of change. The former writers are writing the world as it is. This is the way it is. This should be our ideal today. And then the young folks are saying, we're not going to talk about the world as it is, because we are going to talk about the world as it should be, and we're going to even take it beyond our imagination. So that's very encouraging to see. So I'm just going to go a bit current of what has happened recently. That the Nobel Prize came home, as quoted by Wole Soyinka.
Yes.
That Abdul Razak Gurnah, you discussed at BBC. I think I watched your interview. How do we then nurture this young talent so that they are able to find their voice? You talked about a couple of authors now that are publishers are willing to pay top dollar to publish. how can we continue to get more of that as we're now getting in the entertainment industry? How do we continue to get more of that in terms of in the African literary space as we just continue to preserve? Because I feel like Ainehi, our history, for me, a lot of it is being diluted. And I feel like African literature is the frontier that can help us preserve what we have, based on the former generation and the new generation just saying, okay, this is our future. So how do we nurture that?
There are different ways to do that. I would say the first is systemic, right? Because literature is not existing in a vacuum, right? It feeds off of whatever exists in its cultural space. So the first line of action to me is making sure that African public schools are where they need to be, right? Because on a very basic level, you need to know how to write, right?
True.
You understand? Before you can now begin to nurture the writing within a creative writing context, right? And this is something that we see firsthand in the submissions that we get. We're only able to accept a handful of submissions, right? In part because many of them are not where they need to be. And I think that these harks back to the fact that in many African spaces, I can speak for Nigeria because that's where I'm from, and I went to public school in Nigeria, so I can tell you firsthand. And I know for a fact that it hasn't changed.
Good product.
You're like, you're actually undermining your hypothesis.
But to be honest, the public schools now, they need a lot of help. And
they need a lot of help. That's
probably going to be in a lot of in a different conversation.
Do. Yes.
Oh
yes,
my goodness.
They do. They need lots more funding, and they need to be structured in such a way that they nurture children and students from a young age to be curious, to know more, right? Because in a literary industry, it's not just about the writers. You know, when people talk about literature, they think about writers. A literary industry is an ecosystem. You know, we need translators, editors, publicists, publishers, you know, to carry the industry. So, you know, because public school is sort of the first line of education, it's important that people get the help and the training that they need. The next step for me is capacity building, right? You know, we have the African writers globally who are doing things. It's all well and good. We love our Adiches of the world, our Tejukols of the world, you know, our Maza Mengistes of the world. She's an Ethiopian American novelist. We love them, right? They're doing so many big things. But we have to begin to think of how can we create a critical mass of writers, right, who will continue to feed the industry. And that to me involves investing in emergent voices, investing in early career writers. So I'm not talking about people who are established. Writers like the ones that submit to Brittle paper. These are young people who just have a passion to write. They may not have the skill, but they have the passion, they have the mindset, they have the time. How can we get them at that stage of their career and give them the training that they need in order for them to go to the next level? And creative writing training is super expensive. You can't pay for it. If you're a 17-year-old kid or a 19-year-old young adult in Kigali or Lagos, like you can't pay $400 for a creative writing course, right? They're prohibitively expensive. So how can we create infrastructures, pipelines that give these young writers affordable training or free training, and then allows them to have the space to thrive? And so the last thing will be kind of making sure that there are platforms for these people. So continuing to work to build the publishing industry so that our writers can have access to the global literary market. I'm just going to give a quick example. If you haven't read this Son of the House by Cheluchi Onyemelukwe, it's a lovely book about two women who get kidnapped by kidnappers. And then when they found themselves in the place where the kidnappers kept them, they were like, you know what, let's just swap stories, you know, and then they started telling each other about their lives. And, you know, the ending is just, you know, really powerful and affirming. That book was published by a Nigerian publisher originally, but then ended up being picked up by Penguin Random House in the US, in Canada. We want to see more of that type of flow of the literary market, because we are sort of, you know, not tired, but there is a problem with all the cool stuff being published on in the West, and then African publishers buying rights, you know, from publishers in the UK, in the US, for them to publish Nigerian editions of their books, of their of the books of Nigerian.
Really?
Oh, are you kidding me? Absolutely. That's how it works. You know, you know, many African writers are first published in the West, and then maybe a publisher like Narrative Landscape in Lagos will then buy rights and then publish the West African or the Nigerian edition of that book.
Why is it a Nigerian edition? Is it not English?
Why? Because it's the way publishing rights work, right? So you would negotiate for different kinds of rights tied to different regions. For example, a novel will have a UK edition and a US edition, a Canada edition, a China edition, right?
I see.
Right. It's just in terms of how the deals having to do with rights are struck, right? So you have a case where African writers are publishing in the West, and then African publishers have to pay for these rights in order for them to then publish the book at home, you know. But Cheluchi's book is an example in which her publisher is Nigerian. So imagine how that kind of creates an inflow of cash and influence, where now her Nigerian publisher is the one selling rights to all these big publishing houses.
Gotcha.
Do you get my point? So it's a much more viable system for Africa publishing on the continent, you know. So we kind of need, you know, infrastructure that would allow us to do more of those kinds of things, where publishers in Africa have leverage, you know, in ways that allows them to be competitive in the global literary market.
So how can that happen, that they're able to get that leverage? Is it that, because I know some of the authors are maybe Africans in the diaspora, but the ones that are actually in the continent, is it, so what could it be like an inflow of, okay, we have writers that write, and then they get a Nigerian or Cameroonian or Beninese publisher, and then they publish, and then they're able to sell the rights to other countries. So is it that we just need a better infrastructure where we have better writers so that can happen? Is that kind of how that should go? I'm very intrigued by this, because this is really interesting.
Yeah, it's I don't know that it's about the talents of the writer. It's about who can pay
the infrastructure
for the talent, right? So if an American publisher is going to give me more for my book, why am I going to, you know, have my Nigerian publisher, you know, who might not be able to match that kind of offer? Beside that, though, it's also about the way the global publishing industry works. Is that, you know, sadly, it is skewed in favor of Euro-America. So if you're published in America by one of the big threes, you know, Penguin Random House, for instance, if you are published by them, that means you already have access to a kind of platform, visibility for your work, right? It's easier to go global that way than to have your indie press in Lagos or Nairobi, right? Who may not have as much reach, as much money for publicity, as much connections, to place you in necessary prizes and things like that. So it's just, again, a matter of capital and access and influence. Is that, these folks in the West, they are the industry, so like they are commanding the ways in which books are circulating globally. So we need a kind of situation where publishers on the continent can have leverage, and can have access to support and capital that they can use to promote their authors in the right way. And again, remember that I said that the literary scene is an ecosystem. It is also tied to, of course, people like us who provide publicity for writers, in the sense that the more we can get African platforms that have global visibility, the more we can also aid these publishers and help them with their books being visible in a meaningful way. That's it's there are different parts to it, and the key is nurturing every aspect of the industry.
Okay. It's interesting. Thanks for that insight, Ainehi. So now, we just went back and forth about Brittle paper. I mean, a lot of people who have global reach are very modest, which you have been quite modest about Brittle paper, but Brittle paper is a global platform and very well respected globally in terms of African literature. So who are the next authors and poets we need to be looking out for, like within the next? Are you, as you're looking through all these entries, are you seeing the next Chimamanda, the next the next so that when they start to blow, I'll say, hey, you heard it here first.
I mean, I would say, I think there are lots of new voices coming up. I would say one person to look out for is a Nigerian writer called Kasima. That's just her name. So she has what in literature we call a mononym. Her name is just Kasima. And she has this collection of short stories coming out on November 2nd called All Shades of Iberibe. And it's like one of those absurdist stories that blend realism and a bit of fantasy, the supernatural. It is absolutely gorgeous. And she's somebody that many people don't know about, but that they are absolutely going to be blown away by. I would say, in terms of people who I'm looking, and I think that they should be watched closely, I would say Cheluchi Onyemelukwe. So the woman who wrote, what's it called? Son of the House. I think she's one of my, she's somebody that just kind of burst into the literary scene, and it's clear that her writing is one that is going to be around for a long time. In terms of diaspora people, I would say writers like Namina Forna. She's Sierra Leonean American, I think, and her fantasy novel, The Gilded Ones, is pretty amazing. And then Jordan Ifweko is also another diaspora fantasy writer who is doing big things. In Nigeria too, we have TJ Benson. In fact, let me just use this as a shout out to Masobe Books. It's an indie publisher based in Abuja. And I mean, what those guys are doing is amazing. Talk about someone who is figuring out the business of publishing, and also the publicity of publishing, and leveraging social media, to create visibility for their authors and their book. Masobe Books is amazing, and I love what those guys are
Wow.
doing. And I feel like to
They're
think
my
about,
neighbors.
oh yeah, okay, to think about the industry more broadly, right? Is that again, they are writers that we should be looking, out for, as in for what they are going to do in the future. But there are also publishers who are doing so much, and I'm like, watch out for those guys. They are really going to change the way we produce and consume African literature.
Awesome. So that's a comprehensive list of authors that we will be looking out for in the next coming months, the next coming years. So that's exciting. So like we were saying earlier in the conversation, there are many young people who are passionate about writing. So where do they start, and how do they start to amplify their voices as authors? Now, guys in the audience, if you have any questions for Ainehi, please put it in the comment section so that we'll be able to kind of have a live conversation. Thank you, guys. All right.
I mean, I would say keep writing, right? You have to be right to be a writer. And sometimes I think people don't always connect the two. You'd be surprised. To be a writer, you have to write. Just keep writing, and writing is one of those kinds of skill that you essentially build on over time. You know it by doing it. So I would say develop a habit of writing. And secondly, begin to build an audience now. You are never too young, and you're never too obscure to build an audience. And this is where social media and digital culture in general comes in. Whether you only have 20 followers on Instagram, that is an audience. And that is special, and you are privileged, because 30 years ago, 40 years ago, people didn't have that. Whether you have 20 followers on Instagram, it means that there are 20 people that are waiting to hear what you have to say, and that can respond to you and give you feedback and engage with you. Like, use that, to begin to build a voice and find a voice and create a community around your work. And I've seen this happen with artists, with writers. You start small, and then before you know what, you have this army of people who hang on every word you say and who value your art and your work. But I think is instead of kind of, focused on wanting to go viral, just start building little by little, whatever small audience you have, and create for them. They will be generous, they will be kind to you, and more so, they will give you a space to fail, to experiment, to figure things out as a writer. That's what Brittle paper was for me. So I'm saying this from experience, and before you know what, you will build an audience. And then secondly, begin to send your writing out. Don't be scared of rejection. Rejection doesn't mean anything. It just means that somebody somewhere did not like what you wrote. Okay, that's not the end of the world. Send it to another person.
Yeah.
Get feedback from people. Look for mentors, and just keep writing and submitting. There are platforms like Brittle Paper. There are many of them that are focused on emergent writers. At Brittle Paper, we are not trying to publish anybody fancy. We are not trying to become the New York Times of the New Yorker of Africa. We are not gatekeepers. We're essentially focused on these first-time writers. If you know how many people have said, I was first published on Brittle Paper, and they've gone on to become like script writers in Nollywood, they've become novelists, but they will say that Brittle Paper was the first place they got published. That's the story I want. So branding wise, we focus on those writers that are just coming up and that need a space, and they need real audiences to engage with their writing. That's what we provide. So send submissions to us, okay? And places like us as well, and begin to try your hands at what it means to write and seek out publication in places. And, try as much as you can to read. Writing is about reading, okay?
It is.
It's fundamentally about reading. If you're not a reader, it's like,
I know.
you
It's
understand. So
it's like putting, like, for me, I think reading is like depositing in the bank, and then writing is withdrawing. So if you
I
don't have
love
any
that.
deposit, you can't withdraw.
You
Yeah.
can't withdraw, it's like a chef telling you that they don't eat, they starve themselves. And you're just like, no, that doesn't work. So yes, read voraciously, and find community, and network. There are many people that we offer some kind of informal mentorship relationship with. So seek people who can give you that extra support to open doors for you in your work. And just be true to yourself. African worlds have so many stories. Tell stories that you believe is true to your world and to your imagination, as opposed to trying to, kind of rehash or reproduce in a kind of unreflective way what somebody else is doing.
Exactly. Thank you so much. That was quite comprehensive. As you gave like really a step-by-step way for a young artist to just come in and just start writing, reading, and making moves. So let me not take up too much of your time. Let's just get your final thoughts.
I would say thank you for inviting me to share this space with you, which I think is really beautiful. And I mean, it speaks to your brilliance to kind of bring in cultural curators into the very important conversation you're having here about how to systematically create change in the world. Because not everybody would make this connection. Look, that writers, literary people, books, narratives is part of the broader attempt to change the world, but
Yes, it
you
is.
are. And I think that is super meaningful. And yeah, I'm really delighted that I'm here. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Ainehi, and thank you for the great work you've been doing. You've really, like they say, a lot of us go into the diaspora and we get all the knowledge and we're like, okay, it's just me and mine. I feel like you're sharing your gift with all of us, and you're using your gift to really change the world. Just really the innovation you used with literature, because there are many others before you, but the difference is the innovation you decided to use to really contribute to changing this, having this paradigm shift in African literature. So and the world notices what you're doing, and you really inspire me. Anytime I'm trying to come up with one innovation or the other, I'm calling you like, girl, what do you think? Because you really led the way for us to in terms of innovation and trying to do our own work on our own way to change in the world. So thanks so much, Ainehi.
Thanks
And
to you.
Yeah, this is not going to be our last conversation. I'm going to be having conversations. It's going to be like a civic space discussion series, talking about the shrinking spaces in Nigeria, and we're going to be having panelists having conversations about the shrinking civic space. So I will probably in 2022, but and we will be having those kinds of conversations. So thank you so much, lady.
Yeah,
of course, we'll keep you posted.
It's literature can be a powerful tool to expand civic spaces in places where it's been shrunken. Because give people a book to read and it takes them places. So yeah, that's an amazing conversation. Let me know. I'd like to be part of it.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you so much. All right, take care
Thank you for
and have a
having me.
lovely day.
You
At least
too.
your day is just starting, so
Yeah.
have a good one.
I'm
Take
sorry.
care.
Sorry for the time mix up and the whole issue. Really sorry.
Yeah, it's fine. We're so glad we had you eventually. So thanks a
Great.
lot, girl. You
Thank
made
you.
it worth it.
Take care,
All
love.
right.
Bye.
Take care. Bye. All right, so we had a conversation with Dr. Ainehi Edoro Glines, who is the founder and editor-in-chief of Brittle Paper. So this was really an exciting conversation that we had. So if you missed it, just go on back and watch it. You know, it's a really good conversation. Just a quick announcement. Social Impact Consulting is hosting a physical in-person grant writing workshop. It is scheduled for November the 25th to 26th to 2021. 2 all-day sessions. Now, look, this is going to be different from a general grant writing workshop. Maybe somebody will just give you a template to fill and, you know, maybe try and do a mock-up. People are going to be bringing actual grants to write, okay? And myself and the resource persons that are going to be there are going to work directly with you so that you'll be able to draft up an award-winning grant. We want to make sure that we prepare you for an award-winning grant. So this is an experiential learning style, and it's for registered nonprofits only, because we want a situation where you're working on an actual grant for a proposal that you're working on. Or if you're a nonprofit and you want to send your staff for training, this is an excellent training for your team. So if you are interested, you know, don't hesitate to reach out to me, you know, on WhatsApp, 0703-539-8086. And also remember that we have an online course, NGO Fundraising for Social Impact. That is also a course. Go on www.socialimpact.ng/courses, and it's only $10K, which is approximately $20. And unfortunately, because of the free fall of the Naira, those of you that are abroad, you might be getting a better deal. So please make sure you sign up, and we'll take it from there. So I look forward to talking to you. And again, subscribe to my YouTube channel, Social Impact Consulting. It's the one with the big blue S. Man, we got a whole lot of videos for you, including this one. Thank you all so much for watching, and let us change the world together. Take care. Bye-bye.